Well, here we are, and they just brought me this bag and said, here's a present for you. Well, I looked inside, and there was 4 guinea pigs. And so we hurriedly constructed a cage. We were expecting to get these guinea pigs, but they they weren't supposed to be here until next week. So now all of a sudden we have 4 guinea pigs, and they brought me this big bunch of, I don't know what this is, this green, but boy, they really go after it. Whatever that is, we need to be growing some out here because they're just eating and eating and eating. We put a little water in there and they haven't touched it once, but they're sure eating that stuff. The kids were here just having a great time with them just a few minutes ago, and you know, then the new wore off, so now the kids are down there playing. But we'll be building the cage for them this weekend. The plan is, anyway, we'll put it over here where the composter is, and we'll have the guinea pigs on the left-hand side, and then with their droppings, we'll go right into the composter. So it'll be real nice, and then we'll be putting worms in there as we get some more worms out of our worm box, and we're coming along, just a step at a time, making things happen. Okay, we've been out shopping today. In Ecuador, it's a trip. We had to go clear across town to get to a Home Depot-ish kind of place, and we came up with the only kinds of netting, the cage material that we can have. Yesterday we got these 4 guinea pigs, and so we have to make a cage. So I've got these 5 different levels of cage material, and I'll be making a cage for the guinea pigs and a little bit for the worms. We can't really see much, but we don't have any J-clips in Ecuador, so we had to just come in and bend the wires. We cut off one side, and then we have the wires sticking out, and we just bent them over. But hey, looks like a cage to me. It's coming together real well, and he's bending the last little bits. We're here at night working on this thing because we've got the guinea pigs sitting out there in a box, and they need to have a little better cage, so we're going to have this done for them tonight. All right, in the light of day, it's a little easier to see our cage. This is how we built it. Again, we're in Ecuador, and not a lot of choices for getting just any kind of tools that we like. A lot of people talk about using the J-clips, and I could see how they'd be a lot easier, but we didn't have them. They just weren't available. So we just used a chop saw and went along the edge of the cage here. Actually, the bottom is complete, and then the sides, what we did, we decided to just cut down the side a little bit and make it a little bit smaller. So we cut off the last bar, the last crossbar here, and then we had all of these that we could just poke through the bottom, and then we just bent them over, and that worked real well for not having any other option. And what we did, we just, one guy held that, and then the other guy just grabbed the cage and just pulled it right along there, and this is what we came off with. There's various, we had a little trial and error on size. As you can see, the first run we had, we kind of slipped with the saw, and kind of, that's why some of the bend overs aren't very big, but hey, it all worked. And then this worked out a lot better, and we cut it a little more close to the middle by just pulling. We had to make sure, the problem was we had to make sure we'd get the cage wire to the ground before pulling it, and just pulled it through the saw and just cut off real easy. Then it made a real easy way of making this happen. So, but this is a constructed cage. It's all ready to go now. So the only tools we used was that chop saw and then just some hand pliers. Now another problem we found was the construction of this is pretty poor, and as you can see, the welds are kind of highly visible here and not all that great. And in fact, here the wire was missing. It wasn't even in the cage at all. There was one little piece of it, and we wound up needing to replace that, and so we just used this regular aluminum wire and
I wanted to show a little bit about how we did that. This comes in, and as you might can tell, it goes behind and then over and behind and over and behind and over. So we wove it through. And now that was a bit of a trick until we decided how we might do that. And we took the pliers, and this is, if you have anything you have to fix one of these with, I know that'll still move around, but I don't think that's going to bother the animals. We'll monitor it, and if it's a problem, you want to try to set it in the center as best you can. But if it's a problem, we'll fix it. But what we did was we started by just going in here and just pushing down, and that pulled this one up and pushed this one down. And the problem that we got into with that is many times if we'd push too hard, we were breaking these bad wells. There's just poor manufacturing. That's the problem. The guys told me in Ecuador, that's what you're going to get. It was manufactured in Ecuador, and it's not a very good quality. So some of the places, and it's probably more down in here, we've broken some of the wells. But anyway, we were just more careful, and we found that if we worked on bending them up away, or using this and making sure this stays connected, and bending this one up instead of pushing the one down, because if you push it down, it pushes away from this and it breaks those poor welds. So be sure, if you have this kind of a problem, work on pulling the one up. And then we just took these needle nose pliers and just pulled that wire, one guy pulling and another guy kind of pushing and feeding through as best we could. And so now we've got a repaired cage. So not pretty, but hey, functional is what we're really looking for here. And we got to get these animals in. We've got 4 guinea pigs that's got to get up there. So I want to tell a little bit about the cage and how, I mean, it's really strong. And as cages get, as you put them together, they get really strong. So what we've done is put a centerpiece in here, but it's off center. As you can maybe tell, it's off by, I don't know, it's about 40%-ish or so. And the reason for that is when you're doing guinea pigs, you have to get the adults in one side. Actually, the adults will go over here, which I know that's just doesn't seem logical, but that's what's going to happen. All the adults go in here, and we're going to have 11 adults, and we like to say that we're going to have 10 females and 1 very lucky boy, and he will be servicing those 10 females. You can't have 2 males in the same cage; they'll kill each other. And actually, that's one of the problems with guinea pigs. It's one of the problems of raising guinea pigs is that you have to have separate cages for the adults and for the babies, and you have to leave the papa over here in the smaller side. And the reason that we've got the bigger side for the babies, and I know that does seem kind of odd, but it's true, the mamas stay with the babies until they get grown up enough, and so there may be 2 or 3 or more the females that are pregnant at any given time. So we need a lot more room for the mothers and babies, and then you keep the father over here, because if you don't keep him separate, he will kill the babies. So it's one of those things about raising guinea pigs. And of course, they're raised here for food as well as pets. So like people raise chickens in the U.S., you know, you raise them as a pet maybe for a while, if they've got 1 or 2, or a little baby pig maybe, but eventually they become dinner. So that's something that they do in Ecuador. And I don't know exactly how long it takes. I'm learning all that stuff, but I do know that these are being raised as both pets and food. So a little more on this later. I got to get these the hole cut out so we can get in there into the cage. And we've decided now that we built the cage the way it was, and once we got the cage material that we could get, we weren't sure what we could buy, so we couldn't pre-plan very much except the general size of the cage. So what we're going to do now is is cut the top, because this is so large it would be hard to reach if you were cutting it in the front. So our decision has been that we're going to make a hole in the top, and then always when you make a hole in the top, you're going to cut a hole a little bit smaller. I mean, you can't reuse that same material, so we're going to use this that we already had, a little dish strainer or wherever that came from, I don't know, but we're going to put that in there and then cut a line inside of that just a little bit, big enough that we can reach in and be able to get to all the different corners, so we can get the animals or service their bedding or whatever we've got to do. And then we'll take this piece out and use it as the top for over here, and then cut something a little smaller than that is, and then we'll be able to reach in these corners. So that's what we're going to do now. I'll get that taken care of and share a little bit more about that in a minute.